All right, it's 10 o'clock and I want to go ahead and get started. That way we have enough time to discuss kind of any issues you guys have with the group, what kind of changes you think we need to make. I'm open to hearing any constructive criticism, any ideas you guys think about our objectives, where you want to see the group going forward. I know that a lot of us feel like this is just kind of another thing on a checklist that we were required to do, and all our days are, I know all of them are extremely busy, and it just feels like it's just taking up time. But I do want to make it a group where you guys are kind of excited to come to the meetings, that you want to spend at least a little bit of time of your day working on whatever objectives we set on, or making those connections. And so I want to hear any feedback that you guys have, whether it be, you don't like having speakers every meeting, or if you like the speakers, if there's other things that you'd like to see us, tackle during the meetings. Feel free to be as brutally honest as you'd like. It's a new year, so I want to be completely open and start fresh if we need to work on things that you guys feel like are not our strong points. Anything that you feel like you want to share with the group, with me. If you don't feel comfortable saying anything, you can send me a message in Messenger and I can bring it up. I won't use your name if you don't want me to. You can send me an email with topics you think that you want to discuss. And so I wanted to go ahead and do that, get started, because we do have a speaker today. She's from the University of Kansas. She's one of their transition coordinators. So then she should be joining us around 10:30 or a little bit after. So I'm going to open the floor to anybody that wants to jump in and, talk about any ideas you have for the group, anything, you want to see changes made, if you want to shift our focus, just I'm open to anything you guys want to talk about, any struggles you might be having. So I'll open the floor to anybody that wants to jump in and address anything they feel like we need to talk about.
Well, I guess I'll be the first one. I think
Jump right on in.
The speakers are good that we have. And I agree with you. We're at a standing still because transportation is a big deal in every place, just like Sedan. Our transportation for Sedan is down, and the board is trying to decide if we can afford a new vehicle. So, and unfortunately, we have to keep having this, regardless if we like it or not. And I think you're doing a great job. I just don't see how, our goals are realistic, but I'm like you. Sometimes I feel like we're stepping backwards in it, but I don't know how to change that.
And honestly, Diana, I'm right there with you. And I feel, from conversations that I've had with other members of the group, or just comments that I've heard, especially over the last few months, it feels like we're at a standstill, and in some cases moving backwards. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to kind of have just this open discussion, was to see, is there something you guys, feel like we can do to, get that spark back in there to try and, help us move forward, because we've definitely plateaued. And so I wanted to know if there was anything that anybody might be struggling with, that they feel like, if we focus on something in that area, maybe it'll kind of jumpstart in other areas. Or if there's, something that we haven't discussed, you feel like, or if there's a different direction, something we need to focus on that says, hey, if we do this as a group, maybe we can actually make some progress in all of our areas, not just one or two.
So could you go back and cover what the goals are?
Yes. Our objectives for the group that we set back in 2001, the first objective was have a representative from each of the SILs research resources for accessible transportation in their area in order to disseminate the information for customer use and knowledge. So finding out what's available in your area and making sure it's available to your customers or anybody that might need it. One of the action steps for that was just brainstorming, resources for services, funding sources that, may be available or becoming available that you can kind of tap into to maybe either expand or progress into making transportation available in your area. Especially as far as outreach being like transportation websites, so using social media, meeting with different companies or schools to see what connections might be able to be made. The second objective was to make recommendations to the local, regional, and statewide transportation councils. So like those CTD groups that meet once every couple of months. And then the action step for that one was to collect at least one customer story that was regarding transportation struggle or success that we wanted to share with everybody to see if it was a common thread or if it was, something that none of us had ever thought of, and being able to share those with the SILT groups and on our transportation group website, which these objectives and goals are posted on the homepage of that site. So if you ever need to kind of refresh your memory on that, it is on there. And just attend meetings of the CTD groups or any other transportation councils or community groups in your area to try and make those connections to see what we might be able to do to help kind of further along those transportation objectives. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes. So I wonder, how does everyone feel about those goals? I mean, 2001, that was quite a while ago.
Yes.
And some of those goals kind of overlap with mobility management and kind of what we do. So I don't have any thoughts about it. I guess I'm not sure how to proceed with that. But I wonder if those goals are met and there needs to be different goals. Or if those goals are ongoing.
Christina, aren't we supposed to do goals every so often, every 2 years or something?
Yes, and that's actually those the goals and objectives that we set back in 2001 are set to expire this year. I do know when we had a managers meeting of all the head of the SPIL groups with Kathy Cooper, who's on the state board, she did mention that they had kind of pushed it back another year. But that's part of the reason why I kind of wanted to have this first meeting, was to address the issues of the goals, to see if we wanted to continue with them or if we wanted to tweak them, wipe them out and start over with different objectives. Because I feel like, especially with like the CTD meetings and stuff, most of the group either can't participate because they have other ongoing commitments, or they're struggling to make headway into actually getting invited to or being able to actually fit or join the meetings, whether it be phone or in person, because there's always some pushback. I know I've heard from a couple of people that they try and reach out to the CDD groups and they're like, oh yeah, you can come join our meeting. And then after that, it's like no contact. They won't respond to, any outreach that we've had with them to try and build that relationship. So maybe we need to, go through and adjust that,
Well,
that goal.
And I can talk about CTD meetings. So we meet quarterly here in CTD 7, North Central Kansas. And I
Mhm.
don't know that a CTD meeting is necessarily, they're really just a requirement of KDOT to receive funding for public transportation. So yes, they're ongoing meetings, but I don't know that they're the best forum for change for public transportation, if that makes sense. Like, what really needs to happen if you want to make a change in your service area is to meet directly with the agency that's providing the service, because they're the only ones that are going to be able to do that, make those changes or add service or whatever. So I wonder if we need to look at that as a strategy, of setting meetings with your local transportation agency. But I can definitely give you guys contacts for all of the CTD meetings. And now we have mobility managers in 5 regions. So we have those contacts as well.
Okay. And thank you for that information about the CTD group. So, I guess my question is, as far as any contact with them would be like, if we were working with our local transportation providers and things like that, and, they're open to making changes or expanding, but they're needing the funding for it. Would the CTD be someone that we could reach out to as just a contact point?
Not really. So
Okay.
the way transit is structured in Kansas is each agency has their own budget, and they can decide that budget. They can decide what services they want to provide. They can decide if they want to expand services or not. And they don't need any approval from the CTD at all. The CTD is really just a pass through for those funds that come from KDOT. So there's really no approval process there other than working with that local agency. And then the approval would come through KDOT, if there's extra funds available, if they need more funds or things like that.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Because I know the CTD meetings has been one of the objectives since I came on, would have been 5 years ago. And so that information is very helpful. Thank you for that. And that's definitely something we can address as far as like reorganizing the goals and maybe taking that portion of it out and maybe changing it to, instead of this, go to the CTD meeting stuff, trying to set up meetings with your local transportation provider to see, what's not only what services they're providing, but if they'd be open to making those changes to making them more accessible, whether it be expanding hours or making them more accessible for those of, low vision, hard of hearing, those are physically disabled, that sort of thing. And so, but yeah, we can definitely go and readdressing that goal. I still feel like, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but the first goal and objective of doing some outreach to the customers and trying to get their stories to see what they're struggling with, or if they've had success and, they had a struggle and, they were able to move past it for, whatever reason, whether they talked to their local transportation provider and made other arrangements, or they made progress as far as making a change system wide. I still think that's a good point of contact as far as trying to hear back from the people that actually use those services on a regular basis. And I don't know what your thoughts as far as group wide is on that. If you still feel that that's an worthy objective to try and spend time on, or if you think that we need to go in a different direction.
I think that's a great goal, in my opinion. I think those rider stories of either positive or negative experiences are what drive changes. So I think the more that we can do as a group to provide those specific examples is a great way to effectuate change. So I think trying to have those stories and then having a depository for them of where they live and where they're housed so that they're accessible, and then sharing those with the appropriate parties, so the transit agencies, mobility managers, even elected officials, if that's where those changes need to take place. So if they need additional funding. So I think that's a great goal, and putting something like that into place would be helpful.
Okay.
Yes, and this is Mignon from Beyond Barriers. And one of the things that I'm seeing out in both Southwest and Northwest, not all counties have transit systems. And one particular situation had a consumer that had to move to another state in order to get transportation to and from medical services for her low vision, but she couldn't get it in Kansas because, and even in her county, because there was no transportation in that county to get her from point A to point B to her medical doctor. And so I know that not all counties have transit systems. And then another thing that we're running into is not all counties have information in the languages that the folks in the community can understand. I know we are working on transportation in our local health equity action team, trying to come up with some way so that everyone knows the availability of transportation within just Ford County, not even talking about Hodgman or Ness or some of the other smaller counties. It's just whoever the powers that be in some of these smaller counties do not have transit systems. So we really probably need to help those folks, or those folks in authority, to find how they can get funding so that they can have transit systems for their folks in the community.
So I think that's a great point too. So I wonder if that's a goal that this group can set, to move towards every county in Kansas having transit. I mean, and then that gives you a lot of possibilities for action steps.
Definitely. That's definitely something that we can look at. Especially, when you've got someone who's literally having to move out of state just to get transportation, that should never have to happen. But yeah, then that's a great example of the kind of stories that we're looking for men on. And that's definitely something we can work on as far as getting transportation. That could be, we could use that as a goal to set as making strides to either with transportation that's, in the surrounding counties, working with them to try and expand to have that options, or even, if there's not one set up in, in like you said, in like that four county area, then seeing what we need to do to get something set up and put in place, even if it's just for that area, and they can use the local transportation and maybe then connect with those in the surrounding areas, to make that network. I think that's definitely something that we can work on taking a look at. And then you said the other problem you were having was that those that did have the transportation, there was a language barrier for those in the community. Is that right, Mignon?
Yes, because I know that a couple of years ago, there in the high school, there were 28 languages spoken just in the high school. And I don't know, one of my assignments is to check with the school system to see how many languages we're talking about this year, because we've got folks coming from Guatemala and Somalia and South Sudan, and we're talking folks that are coming in wanting to work at the different plants, and their children are in the school system, and so not all these folks speak English, so trying to find, and not everybody speaks Spanish or whatever language. So trying to find a way to get these folks that speak different languages to learn what transportation is available, even within Ford County. I'm not even talking about the other surrounding counties, but just within this county. And I know that's something that our local equity action team is working on.
Okay. Yeah, and that's definitely something I'm sure we can also take a look at, because I'm sure that's probably not just a isolated problem in your area. I know in our area, especially with having a state university nearby, we get a lot of international students and people moving into the area that from a lot of different knowledges, and they don't always speak English or Spanish. It's and so having those and also I know in like major metropolitan areas, as far as like up near Kansas City or Topeka, and it's not just going to be English and Spanish. There's a lot of different communities. So that's definitely something that if you're if that group that's working on it makes progress, we'd love to hear about it. And that's maybe something that we can also look into our areas and see what we might be able to do to help facilitate that.
And I think that sounds like a good speaker topic, how they do address that. So I think that might be a good idea for that.
I agree. Mignon, do you think someone from that group would be willing to come and speak to our organization and talk to us about how they're doing that and what steps that they're taking to make that change?
I will talk. We have we call it L Heat. We have a meeting tomorrow, a planning meeting. Then our next meeting, I think it's the last or the fourth Wednesday is our open meeting. But I will mention this to the group tomorrow and explain to them what we're working on, and see if I can get our Phil, if he could come and talk to us about what's going on with our transportation project. But right now we're still trying to come up with ways to do what we need to do, and it's kind of a hair-pulling situation to try to figure out. So but we're still working on it, but I will mention it, and I'll mention our SPIL group to them tomorrow and see what they say.
Okay. Of him coming, talking to our group to try and get, give us an idea of what they're wanting to do and how they want to do, that gives us, maybe we can spark some ideas for them, or them saying something they can, maybe we can kind of help get a foothold, so we can figure out what we need to do and that sort of way, kind of use it as a brainstorming, that all of us can kind of maybe pitch in and help with ideas, or maybe someone will have an idea of how to get past some of the barriers that you guys are facing.
Well, and I think the whole equity conversation, just about what your whole group is doing, would be interesting as well. If you could talk about that and the transportation part of it.
I will mention it tomorrow at our meeting, and I might mention it to Phil before the meeting and see who he thinks would be the appropriate person to come and talk to our SPIL group to kind of let us know, because there should be health equity action teams across the state. I'm surprised that none of the rest of us on our group, no one's involved with that, because I know that it should be a statewide activity.
I have not heard of that in Salina, so I'm not sure.
And saying I see Diana shaking her head, and I know we're both down here in Southeast Kansas, and that's not something that we've ever really heard of as far as being an organization in this area.
Excuse me,
but I will
what
mention
is
it.
that? I'm sorry. What is that group that you're referring to? What do they do? I'm confused.
Well, it's a local health equity action team. What my understanding is that we have so much money to spend to help get services to all persons that need the service. Like, I know that we're working on getting a low vision a screening service done in February with a group called Heart to Heart, I think, and it to try to help the children or adults that haven't had a vision screen for whatever reason. It's so that they can come to this activity and have a vision check. And also we're trying to get other distributors that provide equipment for people with low vision or no vision. We're working on that. We have had a health fair that this group kind of sponsored, but there is another group that it's attached to. That's why I think that I need to have someone come and talk to us, to our SPIL group about it, because maybe that's something that the members of the SPIL group can get involved with and say in their community and say, hey, this is something we all need to connect and work on. But I'll talk to them to see who can come and speak, because I know that there's a lady that talks to us and she covers several counties. I think even up to Thomas County, if I can remember right. But I'll talk to them tomorrow.
Right. That would be great. And then if you could just email me and let me know what they say, and then we can make arrangements to have them join our meeting if they're amenable to that, and then we can go from there. I know this is a great line of conversation that we're having, and I'm hoping that our speaker today will be able to maybe give us some insight on their relationship as far as the university that she works for and the city of Lawrence, and their the communications they had and what they needed to do, those steps they needed to take to build, because the University of Kansas, I don't know if any of you guys have been there, if you've seen it, it's a city in itself. And so
that's one way to put it, for sure.
As far as, and then working, to build their, transit system, along with the city of Lawrence, and building that connection and expanding on that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and have her kind of talk to our group about what her job is and kind of how they've built that system within the city of the University of Kansas for and that relationship with the public transit they have there in Lawrence. So Miss Margaretta DeVries, I hope I said that right.
Close enough for the first try. Good job.
Thank you. I
It's
tried,
Margaretta.
but
It is Margaretta. My last name is DeVries. It's still
DeVries.
pronounced the German way.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just jump right in and give my own background because we didn't really prep that.
I figured that would be better than me trying to to make sure I get everything right. So I'm going to switch gears and let you take over and then, you know, I don't know how you want to handle as far as questions. If someone has a question, they can jump in or just wait until you're finished.
I'm okay with people interrupting if you think of something and you're going to forget it like I would. Totally fine. I will just say that I was off for, our office was closed for 2 weeks for the holidays, and then this last week has been really busy with catch up. So I did not prepare anything formal. I'm just going to talk to you very off the cuff and in a sort of organic way. So if I leave something out, definitely, I've opened the chat. So if you stick a question in the chat, or if you want to just jump in and ask questions, I would rather have this be a conversation than just me talking at you. But I am good at the talking at you part. So I'll just start with, I'm Margaretta DeVries. I work at KU Transportation Services. We are the department that is responsible for all of the transit and parking functions at the University of Kansas. This week is my 25th work anniversary in that office. So I am very familiar with all of the parking operations at KU. And to back it up a little bit, since we're talking about the history of transit and how our coordination works, I want to point out that KU has actually had a transit system since 1971. Before that, we had the locally private operated transit that was prevalent all over the country. And when Lawrence Bus Company and the private operations citywide shut down, the university students decided that it was important enough to students to have transit that they instituted a student fee in 1971 to start KU on Wheels. And Lawrence Bus Company, who was the private operator of city service in Lawrence, was the provider of our service until 2007. In 2005, actually, in the year 2000, the city started back up with a publicly funded, publicly operated transit system, Lawrence Transit. In 2005 is the first time that discussion about the possibility of coordination between the city and university occurred. And it was part of a bigger study at KU about needing to have better buses that were more accessible, because at the time, Lawrence Bus Company owned the buses and they were, let's just say, not the most well-maintained buses you've ever seen in the world. And so if you were on campus in the early 2000s at KU, you would remember big white buses with giant clouds of black diesel smoke coming out of the tailpipe. And back then, tailpipes were low down, so everybody in their cars and on bicycles and walking were breathing in a cloud of diesel smoke every time a bus started back up from a stop. And so we started looking at, the university students, the student bus system was run by Student Senate until 2007.
Call Chrissy and ask her if she's got Bill.
Diana, could you mute yourself, please?
Oh, sorry.
So at the time, parking was parking. We didn't have anything to do with transit, but we worked with KU on Wheels to do a park and ride program from a remote parking lot. In 2006, we built a new park and ride parking lot, and worked with the city for the first time to coordinate buying some federally funded buses, and at the same time had a consultant study about how to move forward with potential coordination. That study included possible governance structures, financial structures, and the students at that time cared a lot about making sure that students kept control of their money and how it was spent. And so we never went down the path of a shared governance structure. And so our coordination today is based on the idea that KU has a system that we operate, the city has a system that they operate, and we are coordinating in many ways to make it seem to the passengers like we are one system, when in fact we are not. We have completely separate funding structures. We don't, there's some reasons why we don't have a lot of federally funded buses in our fleet that we can talk about. But beginning in, so the other part of that equation is that students decided to implement a student fee to buy buses so that we could control the quality of the buses, because those giant clouds of black smoke coming out of the tailpipe were so, it was so much, it was bad. You can't even imagine. I mean, actually, if you've been sitting behind a diesel truck, you can totally imagine what I'm talking about. So the students implemented a fee to buy buses, and at that point, administration said, sorry, timeout, Student Senate can't own a vehicle. This needs to be in a department. And that's when our department became responsible for the transit system. So all of the student transportation, so KU on Wheels, our ADA paratransit service, which is JLift, and the Student Safe Ride program all moved into our domain in 2007. In 2008, students voted on a referendum to increase the fee enough to go fare free. And that coincided approximately with our first coordinated route with the city, where we identified one city route and 1.5 KU routes that were basically covering the same path and our routes just ran when classes were in session, and the city route ran on a really terrible every 80-minute schedule, one bus along the same path year round. And so we took all of the resources that we were spending on these 2.5 routes basically, and came up with a better choice that could run year round with higher level of service when classes were in session, and using our pooled resources from those routes to make one better route that did everything we needed it to do. Today we have 2 coordinated routes and many years under our belt where coordination has evolved over time. In 2010, the university built a new facility where all of our operations happen out of. Since 2008, we've had the same contractor for the same contract and RFP, still separate contracts because we're separate entities, but we write one RFP to cover both of our systems. We run it through the city federal procurement process. The university has gone through the steps to ensure that that process meets the state procurement guidelines. And we're actually about to write our 4th joint RFP for service, because this is the 2023 is year 5 of our current 5-year contract. So that process is starting back up, and I've been involved in it every time. So I know a lot about that whole procurement RFP writing process too. I'm not really sure what aspects of our coordination you're interested in hearing about. So I'm trying to just sort of give a rough overview here. Does anybody have any questions about what I said so far, or ideas of what you'd like to hear about and what we're doing? No, nobody has any questions.
I think I'd like to, I guess, to hear more kind of in detail about, I know you said you're two separate entities, but I know that there is, some overlap, like you said, as far as like, working together so you're not covering the same routes, the same time, and making that more efficient. And then, I guess, you talked about, using, one as far as like one thing to get funding for, well, not funding for both.
One RFP.
Yes. As far as that goes, because I think that's one of the key problems that that I've heard we've run into as far as like wanting to expand, or when you're trying to work with the locals or even starting their own, is procuring the funding for it, as well as looking at okay, do we want to use, like you said, you were there for a while, you guys, you're using buses that were owned and managed by another company, and so
Sure. So there's a lot of different ways that transit works, and the basic combinations are, you have a local organization governing body. So for me, that's KU, the city, it's the city. In some areas, if it's a larger area like Kansas City, they have an area transit, like a regional transit authority, which I'm guessing none of you are living in a place that's likely to have that sort of size of regional transit authority. But if there's something that a city and county can cooperate on, or several cities can cooperate on, that's where a regional transit authority becomes relevant. But our procurement is not about our funding. We go through a completely separate process for our funding sources. So KU's transit operations are almost wholly funded, and by almost, I'll explain that in a minute. But primarily, we are using Student Senate required campus fee dollars. So each student at the university, and this is actually true at all of the region's universities to some degree or another, there are organizations on campus that are funded through student fees, required campus fees. So when students get a bill, their tuition bill for KU, you get a line that says tuition, you get a line that says housing, you get a line that says required campus fees, and it's somewhere around $500 per semester per student. And those fees are what pays for KU on Wheels and JLift and buying buses and Safe Ride. The process that we go through for that is a Student Senate process that we're actually in the middle of getting ready for, because that'll happen in February for our next fiscal year starting in July. The city was originally funded through a mill levy, and in 2008, in their infinite wisdom, the city commission decided that it should not be funded through a mill levy anymore, but that it would be funded through a sales tax. And that meant that it had to be voted on by the public in order to decide whether or not to approve funding transit through a sales tax. And at the 10-year mark, and it had a 10-year timeline. So that sales tax expired in 2018. And in 2017 or 18, I think it was 17, it went back on referendum to have the city vote on it again to decide whether or not they wanted to fund transit through a sales tax. And they did approve it again. And so currently the city's funding for transit runs through 2028 in their sales tax. Our RFP is for operating our service. And so we each contract with an outside company to manage all of the fleet maintenance and operations, hiring drivers, training drivers, scheduling drivers, managing all of the parts of the operation. And that is the RFP that we're getting ready to write for the next 5-year contract. Some places have dedicated transit funds. Depending on the size of your city, you are eligible for some federal funding, either through the RTAP program for rural transit agencies. And I don't remember what the name of it is, but 5307 funds help fund Lawrence. Lawrence gets a portion of their budget through federal funding formula. It's called formula funding under FTA.
So
And then go ahead.
see, outside of your metro areas, it's 5311 and then 5310. So there's 2 different funding streams.
Yes, thank you. I don't know them off the top of my head
Right.
since I don't deal with them at all. And then the city does their bus procurement through federal grants, and they've applied for and received federal grants several times. In the last 3 were for electric buses. So the first 5 electric buses that were in the 2020 Low-No grant application and that they received just arrived in August. And we'll have and by we, I mean they, but we talk about ourselves as a group regularly. So the city will have 2 more electric buses by the end of this year and 2 more in 2024 to bring them up. Actually, 2 more big buses and 2 paratransit vehicles in 2024 to bring their fleet up to a total of 11 electric vehicles that'll be in service. KU is contemplating whether or not we can apply for federal grants for electric buses. We would like to, but there are some problems with being sure that we can because of charter rules. And we're working on getting that reviewed again by FTA. And hopefully someday electric buses will have enough battery capacity to actually run a bus on the KU campus. I don't know if you've noticed our hill is like this. And so fully loaded buses going uphill in the cold need a lot more electricity than on the flat in a regular like fall or spring day. And so the range and capacity is a major component of what we have to consider. And the vehicles that the city is getting in 2024 are the ones that might be able to actually run our service. So we have a couple of years before we would be getting buses that could run on the KU fleet side for a full day of service. But the RFP process, if we're going out for bid for a service provider, it's basically a 100-page document that includes all of the federally required language. It includes a scope of work that has all of the city and KU service described in it. And then it has all of the submission guidelines and requirements for the proposals from bidders. And it gets kind of complicated and depends on how you're operating in your local area.
And I was just going to add, I think that's the great thing about transit in Kansas, that it doesn't matter your structure, that there's so many different ways that you can structure transit operations. You know, whether it's through like your partnership between a college and a transit agency with city and county support, or, you know, KCATA with their transit authority, or in Salina, we've got OCCK who provides services to people with disabilities, but they also do public transportation. area agencies on aging, health departments, you know, however we need to run transit, we can run it. So it's cool to hear about all the different partnerships and how they're structured.
No, and I'll agree with that, because I know, and the more I learn, and the more I look into it, like you said, there's so many different ways to structure it, and I think in the long run, that's definitely going to come in handy with trying to work on either partnering with or setting up transit systems that are hopefully more available in those rural areas that either don't have, or the ones they have are very limited in as far as the transportation they provide. Could you talk to us more about your paratransit system, the J-Lift, and kind of the services that it provides and kind of how that got started?
I can. It's very minimal. Because KU's mission is to get people to class, our authorization for people to use J-Lift is limited to class and work schedules at this point. So a student or staff member students have to go through the student office for accommodations that it's called Student Access Center now. It used to be called Academic Access and Achievement Center, and then before that it was called Disability Resources. So it's had a few different names over the years. We do operate a few extra and co-curricular rides. So if a professor says you need to go attend this play and write a report about it for extra credit, then students have the option of scheduling rides like that. But we don't just take them anywhere they need to go. We only take them to and from class and university related events. At any given time, we actually only have around 15 to 20 permanent riders and 15 to 20 temporary riders on any given semester. Permanent being those with long-term disabilities, and temporary being those who are needing it because they broke their leg skiing over spring break, for example. That's actually the least exciting story I've ever heard about why somebody might temporarily need paratransit. Some of the others, I feel bad for people because they do some crazy things that shouldn't break a leg, but it does. But we basically let AAA or Student Access Center handle deciding if somebody needs service, and then we leave it up to our contractor to schedule it. And we usually are only running one or two vehicles, maybe three, depending on how much people's class schedules stack up and they need more people to do it.
So it's more as a call as needed basis instead of you don't like have a fixed route that runs around campus or anything like that. It's just
we do have routes that run around campus, but it is not J-Lift paratransit service. One of the cool things about all of our buses when we started buying buses in 2008, all of the new buses we bought are low floor, and so every bus that runs on campus is a low floor bus that's easily boarded by people with mobility issues. And our ridership on paratransit has dropped pretty significantly because all of the buses are easy to board. And really, like if a person is living in a residence hall on campus, every residence hall has bus service through our on-campus circulators. And then if a person is using J-Lift, it probably means that where they're going on campus is not easily gotten to by the bus route. Like, because there are a few buildings that aren't directly adjacent to a bus stop. And so those kind of nuances are what cause people to want to use J-Lift instead. Or if they're living off campus and they're not near a bus route and they need direct service. But the number of rides we give on any given day is in the 10s and 20s, not the hundreds. So.
Well, does anybody have any questions for Margreta? Sorry, did I get that right this time?
Yes,
Both?
it was. You did my first name right the first time.
Nice.
I'm just curious if I can ask you all, since I don't know anything about your group other than that I offered to come chat today, and I'm sorry I'm not more prepared. I would love to know where you all are from and a little bit more about what it is that you guys work on together in this group.
Sure. Our group is a state plan for independent living group. We focus mainly on transportation. There's other groups that focus on different aspects like housing and outreach and things like that. But our group is supposed to be a group that focuses on finding transportation issues and work kind of networking with other agencies or service providers to help make either transportation that's already in place more accessible, or working to set up transit in like rural areas that have little to no transportation options, and make them more accessible for people who do have a disability. Whether it be physical, mental, emotional, different things, whatever their disability may be.
Sure. No, that's great.
We kind of have we have different people from all across the state that are in our organization, and I want to go through and have everybody introduce themselves. We did have Michelle, who was talking to you, Michelle Griffin. She had to jump off, but she's one of our mobility managers here in the state of Kansas. And then we also have, let's say, Suzanne, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Suzanne. I'm the independent living specialist here in Emporia, and I cover the Lyon County area as well as a few communities surrounding. And I just basically teach some IL skills and help with finding like just different resources in the community for
Sort
people.
of like helping connect people so they understand where they can go for what.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Diana, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Diana Clanton. I'm an independent living coordinator for SPIL, Southeast Kansas Independent Living Resource. Our main subject is, or objective, whatever you want to call it, is to keep the elderly and disabled into their own home and whatever walks through the door. Right now it's sleep and homestead, resources like all the other people. We help them with resources. And our transportation is owned by the Council of Aging, because you was telling people, you know, different organizations, and ours is owned, and we do not have KDOT, so that's a big minus for us. So anyway, I cover everybody east of Sedan, Kansas.
I'm going to tell you that I actually know where Sedan, Kansas is, which might surprise you, but my mom grew up southwest of Wichita, so we've done road trips. And
not too many people, since 166 bypassed us. A lot of people don't know because you have to go through 99 to come through Sedan now.
Well, my years of traveling around the state were in the 80s, so pretty sure we've been through Sedan.
Okay. Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michelle Walker. I am also an ILS, an independent living specialist. I work for Three Rivers. My office is based in Atchison. I cover Atchison, Brown, and Donovan counties.
So you're sort of in my corner.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, not
Sort
too
of.
far. Yeah, not too far. Yeah, so again, I connect people with resources like Suzanne had mentioned, some of the stuff that Diana had mentioned as well. That's pretty much what we do, what I do over here in this corner of Kansas. And as far as transportation goes, it's pretty much non-existent over here. We have Project Concern, but it's not, yeah, it's not easily accessible, you know, for some of the consumers that I work with.
I bet.
Sometimes. Mhm.
You're kind of just a little too far away from everybody to.
Sorry. I need to put my webcam on my big monitor over there, but I haven't done that yet. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been in this position almost a year. At the end of the month, it'll be a year. And one of the big issues here is lack of transportation. So looking forward to learning all that I can to assist the consumers with that here in my area.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Lenise, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, I'm gonna say if you're talking, we having a hard time hearing you. Oh, still nothing. Oh, I was gonna say we're just hearing some background noise. Right. Oh, no, it sounds like there's a bunch of water running in the background. Okay, she just messaged that she doesn't know what's up. I would say if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that'll work.
Can she mute herself?
And then, yeah, I was gonna say, can you go? There you go. Thank you. And then while she's working on introducing herself, Keena, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Keena Steinbrock. I work for Three Rivers and I cover Washington, Clay, and Marshall County.
Okay.
Nice to meet you. I have friends who live in Marysville.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Harley, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Harley Anderson. I'm with the Independent Living Resource Center in Wichita, and we cover Sedgwick and Sumner County. Our transportation issues that we have are more actually inside the city limits of Wichita. There's a lot of the coordinated transportation that's done, outside the city limits. The thing is that the rides have to originate outside the city limits and come into Wichita. And otherwise it's the paratransit. We used to rely a lot on Red Cross. There was, I think, I had just read recently, there was like 15,000 rides a year that, the Red Cross volunteers provided. And then when they reorganized and everything, we lost that. And so there's a lot of people that are having to resort to Uber, which we were just discussing the other day. That's like $75 to be able to go to a doctor's appointment that's across town. So
Uber is outrageous. And It sounds like you guys need a better definition and you're coordinating for what, like the end of the ride can also be outside the city, like have it be not just one directional.
Yeah, it can't originate inside the city limits for some of the coordinated.
Wow, that sounds like a challenge.
So, they can pick them up outside in the county and bring them into the city, but they can't pick up somebody within the city limits and take them like to a doctor's appointment or something. So then we have to rely on paratransit, and sometimes that can be challenging. We have a lot of our consumers that come into classes, and we've had them sitting out there. They were supposed to pick them up at 3:30, and at 5 o'clock, they're still waiting for their bus to pick them up. And then sometimes when they're supposed to be here at 11, they bring them in at 9:30. So it makes for a long day.
That sounds extra challenging, Harley.
Thank you, Harley. Mignon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Mignon Lucky, and I work with Beyond Barriers. And I work in the Dodge City office. I work in 2 different programs as an independent living specialist. I work with the regular independent living specialist program, which is we help folks with disabilities from birth to death. But then I also work with the older blind program, and those are folks who are 55 and over, who have no vision or low vision. And I cover 34 counties in that area, where is with the independent living, I think I help cover about 5 counties. But with the older blind services, I cover from the Hayes to the Nebraska border, to the Colorado border, down to Oklahoma, and then from Clark County up to Norton County. And
that's a huge area.
Yes, ma'am, it is huge. I am actually in Ford County today and tomorrow, and then I'm in Seward County on Thursday. So it just kind of depends on who needs what and when they need it. They just have to call me, and I tell people that my parents didn't send me to mind reading school, so people have to call me if they need me. And but with transportation, I see all kinds of transportation issues in that area. And where in Ford County, where I live in Dodge City, they're working at it. They're not really where they should be, because we have 2 beef packing plants, and we're going to be having a cheese factory opening up, and some other businesses. So trying to get folks where they need to be, whether they're disabled or not, has been a challenge. And this is why I'm on a group called the Local Health Equity Action Team. And so we're all trying to work toward one of the things is transportation, trying to get folks from point A to point B.
Yeah, I know before you jumped on, Mignon was telling us about a customer that she was working with that actually ended up having to move out of state to get the transportation that she needed in order to get to her doctor's appointments and other
That's
things
terrible.
that she needed to do. Yes, when I heard that, I was just like, that it should never have gotten to that point. There's no reason someone should have to leave their home and move, completely out of the state in order to get the transportation that they need. So
that individual had to, and they're in the process of selling their home because they can't keep their home in that particular county and live way far away in the northern part of the United States.
yeah. Well, thank you, Mignon. And our last group member that's on today, Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Heather Jones with Beyond Barriers. I'm an independent living coordinator here, and my office is based out of Hutchinson. And this is my first meeting. I was actually filling in for another staff member who left until we got the new individual trained and whatnot. Then she'll be joining the group. So
So you're temporary.
I am temporary. Maybe I'll stay. I don't know.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
With the new member that's supposed to be joining, if you wouldn't mind sending me their information so I can include them going forward, I would
I will
appreciate
do that. I will do that.
Thank you. And
She's
then,
actually replacing Tammy
okay.
here that was on there. So I'll get you her email.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but, Lynn, I always butcher this and I pronounce her name, but she kind of introduced herself there in the chat. And then, she works for the transportation manager at Independence Inc., which is a center for independent living.
I'm very familiar with Independence Inc. since it's actually in Lawrence. So
oh, there you go. So you kind of know what's.
I have actually referred people there when they're asking for things that are not really in our purview. So
Okay. Well, I'm glad there's that connection there, so that that works really well. But that's the members that are in our group today.
sure. No, I didn't know a lot about what you guys do, so I thought it'd be worth it to ask since I didn't organize something to talk for an hour.
Yeah. Oh no, you're fine, and we completely understand the being closed and then trying to play catch up and doing all of that. So, did you have any other questions for us, or is there anybody in the group that has any questions for our speaker today?
I would just like to say, Christina, that you're welcome to send everybody my email address. And if you think of something later, I may not know the answer, but I have been doing this for 25 years of parking and going on, I think 16 of transit. So I'm a font of knowledge. Or
I was going to say, you've been around the block a couple times.
Or knowing where to send you if I don't know the answer. But, you know, there's also the Transportation Center at KU that works with the RTOP programs around the state. And definitely, I don't know if you guys ever have them participate, but I think it sounds like the majority of folks on this call are working with rural issues, and the Transportation Center that works with our TAP programs might be a really relevant group for you to talk to sometime too.
Okay. If you could send me their information, I would greatly appreciate that.
I will have to look up who's the new director of it because they've changed over a couple of times, but I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions off the top of their head right now? And I'll make sure to send out her contact information so that if you do have questions, you can reach out to her later.
Although I ask that you all remind me where we met, because I won't remember your names.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, if nobody else has any questions, we'll go ahead and let you go, unless you want to stay on for the next few minutes. I'm sure you've probably got a busy day.
This is actually my third of 3 back-to-back meetings, so I'm going to take you up on the option to go, because I could sure use a pit stop at this point.
I'm sure you could.
but thank you for having me. And if you ever want to meet in Lawrence like you thought you were going to do today, I am happy to help you organize a location. It's always fun to find a new place to have lunch and meet people. So
we greatly appreciate that, and thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, and you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You all too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So I know, we kind of, I mean, we were having a good conversation, before, we had her join us and talk to us a little bit about kind of, KU and their somewhat connection with the city of Lawrence and kind of how that works for them. But, is there any other topics that anybody wanted to discuss today as far as the group or issues that you're having, or kind of where you want to see the group going? I am going to take, I'm taking notes, and I'm sure Diana is too. And we'll kind of try and reorganize the goals and things, and I'll get those sent out to you. If you have any input as far as that goes, please email me. Once I get those put together, I'll send them out for your guys' feedback, and we'll work on getting it kind of restructured and reorganized and maybe shift our focus. But I do want to open it back up to anybody that has any other questions or concerns or input as far as the group and kind of what you want to see, and any other things you might want to bring up.
You got to remind me again, when's our next meeting?
Our next meeting will be April 11th. It'll be at 10 a.m.
Oh, and I know you probably did it last year, Christina, but you know me, why don't you send out the days that we're having it, and then if we change and be in person, we can always change that day. But because I noticed there's some new people here.
Yes, yep, that was on my agenda to do as soon as I got the notes typed up from this meeting. I'll include them down at the end of the note section. But yes, our next meeting will be April 11th at 10 a.m. If you guys would like to continue doing the second Tuesday of the month, because we do have, new members and different things, if we find, second Tuesday doesn't work for most of us anymore, we can look at changing days if that's what the group wants. But we'll shoot for the 11th, and then we'll go from there. So if the second Tuesday doesn't work, shoot me an email, and if we get enough, we can talk about changing that. Like I said, it's a new year, and and as Diana mentioned, we got some new members, and so I'm open just to anything that you guys, as far as input, anytime, as far as needing to change anything. The next meeting is set for April 11th, and I'll make sure to put it in the chat for anybody that we do. So April 11th, it's the second Tuesday, and it'll be at 10 a.m. And then we'll go from there. But if nobody else has anything that they want to talk about right now, and like I said, I'm open. Anytime you have any questions, or you have input, concerns, anything like that, please just shoot me an email. I'm open to working with you guys on anything that you might need help with, or if you have concerns, like I said, just feel free to reach out. But if nobody else has anything they want to talk about or anything like that, we can go ahead and conclude the meeting. Alrighty. Since nobody else says anything, we'll go ahead and end the meeting, and I'll get the notes and the dates and everything sent out to you, along with Margretta's information, as soon as I can get it all typed up for you. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and everything goes well until we meet again.